So how do we go from this to this to this to a blender to Sriracha? Hey, it's the Preacher, and today we're making Sriracha sauce, and we're using the vacuum sealer to do it. Well, at least we're using vacuum seal bags to ferment our peppers in, and I've really become a fan of this. And as you can see, I've kind of got a problem. I tend to do it a lot. So I've got some that are de-seeded basically and diced. I've got some that are pureed into a mash. And I've even got some Tabasco. I usually make some form of Tabasco sauce every year. And I usually do it in a big jar. Most of my fermentations in the past have been done in half-gallon mason jars, or even in crocks sometimes if we're making kraut. And you put a burper on the top that allows the gas to come off, and you submerge all of this in a salt brine to keep the anaerobic fermentation taking place. But this is so much easier. I don't know if I'll ever ferment peppers this way again. So if you're not familiar with the process of fermenting peppers, it's how Tabasco sauce is made. It's how Sriracha is made. Many other sauces are made the same way. And that peppers are put in a salt solution, either adding salt to peppers or adding salt water to peppers, and then you allow them to ferment. And how long you allow them to ferment, and how much you process them, and then what you add to them afterwards, whether you add water, whether you add vinegar or a mixture of water and vinegar, or whether you just leave them straight and strain them out and just get the seeds out and have a sauce. That's strictly up to you. I'm going to show you how to make a Sriracha style sauce. This is good. I can't match this, but I can make something very close. I can make things that I even like a little better than the original. So let me show you how that happens. So here's what we're dealing with. These are jalapenos and garlic. And this is 2.5% salt. So I weighed the peppers, and then I took 2.5% of the weight of the peppers, and that's how much salt I added. I sealed this bag on August the 29th. Today is October the 5th. So we're talking about 6 weeks. These peppers have been in this bag sitting on my counter. When you put the peppers in there, there's no liquid, just what's in the peppers. So I diced these. I cut the seeds out, basically. I mean, there's a few seeds in here. And I threw about 4 or 5 heads, or 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. You see these white specks? This is garlic. And you see a few seeds. This swelled up. I mean, it was vacuum sealed tight. It began to swell up, but it never got too full. It never got so full that I needed to cut it. This bag is 3 pounds of jalapenos, 3% salt, and I mashed it with the seeds, and I did that on September the 6th. So they've been in there right at 30 days. Anyways, this bag filled up and was about to pop, and so I cut this corner off. I squeezed all the air out. I didn't try to vacuum seal it. I just pressed the gas out and resealed it. 2 days later, it was about to pop again, so I cut this corner off, squeezed the air out, and resealed it. And now it's still, well, as you can see, it's still pretty much like a pillow. But it hasn't really done any more gassing in the last couple of weeks. So I think all in all, this fermentation is done as well. I did not add any garlic here. I'm going to add the garlic to this batch after fermentation, and we'll compare the flavors. Okay, I have a strainer and a pot to catch the juice. I added no water to this. This was just salt, peppers, and garlic. But as you can see, there is some liquid in here, and it's the liquid of the peppers. And so what I'm going to do is try to catch that liquid and strain it out. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. In a salt brine situation where you're fermenting the peppers submerged under water, you pour the juice off or the water off, and you also pour off a lot of the salt with it. In here, the salt is part of it. So the only way I can reduce the salt is to take the juice of the peppers and catch it in the bottle. So I'm going to do that. If I need a little liquid to thin things down, I'm going to use either this juice in the bottom or vinegar. It's also the only way I can regulate the thickness of it. It's easier to add it back, but once you blend it, you can never put it back in there. You can never get it out. Give this a little shake. I need some of that liquid to make it blend properly. Let's go ahead and add this second bag. I did these exactly the same way. They came out of the same batch of peppers. They just fermented in 2 different bags. And I'm going to tell you, when I open this up, it smells like Sriracha sauce, just as is. It smells just like Sriracha. Gotta be careful I don't splash any on Mr. Spurgeon. Let's just try a piece. Man, that's good. Those would be great right now. If you were making salsa, just get a handful and throw it right in your final mix and can it or serve it fresh. There's a tanginess there from the fermentation. It still has the heat of the jalapenos, and that's all these are just red jalapenos. We let all the jalapenos go to completely red before we harvested them. Now what we want to do is run them through the blender, get them thoroughly blended, and then we're going to run them back through the strainer. Okay, that's the consistency you want. I'm going to do this until I get them all done. I've reserved my salt mixture in the bottom, so we'll get them mixed up and then it'll be time to blend and taste. Hear that vacuum? Really heats up when you blend them. This will give you an idea of consistency. That ought to be about right. Okay, this is my 3rd batch in the small canister. And if you have a Ninja blender, I'll say this. The big square container that'll hold quite a bit, and I think it has like 3 blades. I've got it right there. It's great for blending things, but if you really want to just destroy them like this, get them to just liquid, you really need to use this small blender. It works so much better. The square container has corners, and in those corners what happens is, well, it just doesn't get everything as blended as you do in this round container. And this stuff really is good to the last drop, so you want to get every drop out of there. Now I took all of the liquid out of the bottom. I put about a tablespoon of the liquid in each batch just to help blend the peppers and give them enough moisture to move them around so that they would properly mix up and blend up. Here's our first 2 batches in the blender. We want to work this pulp through there. I know that I can hear the liquid running through it, but any pulp that's big enough to fit through this screen, we want it because we want that ketchup-like consistency that you get with Sriracha. And this is going to take a while because you're just going to sit here and force it through the sieve. There's one that escaped. Okay, this is pretty coarse and chunky what's left, so it's just time to clean up the outside. Now you don't have to throw this away, but it's really basically hard seeds and pieces of the outer skin of the pepper. It's not the best texture to use, so if you wanted to add some vinegar to it and run it through, let it set, you could extract some flavor from it. But when you look at how much we have in the bowl, everything on this side of the screen has been strained and filtered, and we don't want to let it get away. We've worked hard to get it to this point. We've waited for 6 weeks for it to ferment. Everything on this side of the screen is a keeper. A smaller spatula would probably be better, but I hate doing dishes, so I'm going to use the one I've already gotten dirty. Now is a good point to wipe down the counters and get all the little splashes and drips and chunks and anything that might have fell out or dropped as you put it together. Let's get everything cleaned up. We'll come back and blend it. Now obviously it's not really suspended. Our liquid's kind of separated from our solids, but our solids are really fine. This is all we ended up with that didn't get blended enough, and I probably could have kept pushing and prodding and got some of that out, but you're basically looking at 3/4 of a cup and probably a cup of liquid that we can, now the liquid we can still use. We can add some vinegar to that and make a sauce out of it by itself, or we can add it back to our sauce if we need more liquid and less vinegar. Well, you've seen the consistency. Now it's time to season it and make it taste like Sriracha should taste. So what you typically do here is add sugar and vinegar and then some sort of thickener. I'm going to be using xanthan gum. If you want more salt, add it here. If you want more garlic, you add it here. It calls for usually distilled vinegar. That's what most recipes call for. But since we're adding sugar and we want sweetness, I prefer to use wine vinegar. White wine vinegar is what I keep. But since we're red and we want a red sauce, and it's a little bit orangey, I mean not bad orange, it's really red, but since we're going for a red look, I'm going to add red wine vinegar. Not that I have an exact measurement in mind, it's hard to tell when you're just sitting here pouring how much you're pouring in, because it kind of trickles out. I'm going to start with a 1/2 cup. Okay, that is a 1/2 cup of red wine vinegar, which there again does two things. It keeps our good red color, and it adds a little bit of sweetness and the vinegar flavor that we're looking for. If I need more tang, I'll add distilled vinegar. Now for sweetness, sugar, but I prefer molasses. You want something that has a really rich sweetness. Brown sugar or molasses is always better, and it darkens up our sauce. Probably want about that much more. You don't want to taste molasses. We're not trying to make oatmeal raisin cookies. But it gives you a little more, I don't know what you call it, richness over just plain white sugar. With molasses, we could be sitting here for 30 minutes. Got my hands cleaned back up. Molasses is off of my fingers. Still need sugar. We don't have that textbook sweetness. Three tablespoons of sugar. Now, some vinegar. And this is white distilled. I'm guessing that was 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. Now that we've got it close, it's not completely blended, it's not thoroughly blended, it still needs some time. Here's what we're going to do. And guys, you can do anything here. This is your sauce. If you want to add pineapple in here, you can add pineapple in here. It doesn't matter. This is your sauce. Just have to keep in mind, you don't want to add so much new stuff that you restart the fermentation process and explode your bottles or make it where it's not shelf stable. Now here's where it splashes. And I like to put the spoon in there and pour on the spoon. It doesn't completely stop it, but it does prevent a lot of it. Otherwise, you're going to drop on your ceiling. So how much did we end up with? Right at 48 ounces. If we don't add anything else, we're just over 6 cups, or 1.5 liters of Sriracha. Okay, and the purpose of this, we're not trying to pulverize the peppers any further. The purpose of this is just to get the seasoning evenly distributed. The molasses, the sugar, the red wine vinegar, and the distilled vinegar, and now we need to know what it tastes like. And I got a chip. We'll just get some on a spoon, throw it on a chip. We'll see where we're at. Let's try a little bit right on the spoon. We're pretty close. That's very good. I still think we need 2 more tablespoons of sugar. So all in all, in 6 cups of Sriracha, I've added 2 tablespoons of molasses, 1/2 cup of red wine vinegar, and now 5 tablespoons of sugar. Okay, final test. That's it. That's very good. I've got the sweetness, a little bit of the vinegar, a whole lot of the fermented pepper. All there is left to do is add some xanthan gum. I've never found a science this worked for. Some sauces I've added like a half a tablespoon of this and it never got thick. Other sauces I've put a pinch in and it got thick like gravy. So all I know to do here is just add a little and see where we are on thickness. And so rather than just dumping some in this whole jug of 48 ounces, I'm going to take a little bit of my liquid that I drained off of the peppers. This just pepper juice. I'm going to take a quarter of a cup off the top. And I'm going to add the xanthan gum to the peppers. I'm going to call that a teaspoon. And I'm just going to use this to soften it up. And then pour that into there. Put that on low. Alright, it just kicked off. So I ran a cycle on low till it got hot and stopped. A buddy of mine just sent me a picture of some snapping turtle jerky. I'm like, I don't know if I'm that hungry yet. Let's have a look at this. Oh yeah, a lot more smoother. Let me get a fresh spoon. Some of you tree huggers are keeping count. This may be spoon number 5 just on this batch. That's the consistency we want. The xanthan gum did its job. It suspended those pepper solids in there where we want them. Made it real smooth and velvety. I don't know if velvety is the right word. Shiny. It looks right. It tastes right. Man, take your vacuum sealer, put your peppers in it, make 2% salt according to weight, add it to it, vacuum seal them, seal it, keep an eye on it. If it starts swelling up full of air, and it should give off gas as it ferments, as it starts to fill up, cut the corner, press the air out. Don't hit vacuum, just hit reseal. You may have to do that 2 or 3 times, depending on how well of a fermentation you get. Add some garlic in there while it's fermenting. Then you're ready to blend, add sugar, add your choice of vinegar, add as much or as little as the juice as you want, and then use xanthan gum to gather the thickness that you want. That's how you make it. Now I'll bottle this and share it around with some friends. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the kitchen again.